So can you give us a little bit of a history of that and how you specifically started getting involved and what drew you to like your first contact with methylene blue?
Methylene blue is a very complex molecule, and it's not something that is easy to just give an elevator version of this molecule. But the real benefit with methylene blue lies in its ability to support the mitochondria. Another really exciting aspect of methylene blue is it's neuroprotective and cardioprotective. You want to talk about a rocket ship to health and wellness, this is the recipe.
Hi guys, welcome back to another edition of Beyond Biohacking Brothers, where we talk and explore everything about longevity, optimization, biohacking, and beyond. As always, I'm here joined by my brother Carlos, and today the guest that we have is nothing short of a legend in the world of health optimization, longevity, and consciousness. Dr. John Laurance is a globally recognized naturopathic physician, functional neurologist, speaker, best-selling author, and the visionary behind Mitozen. Oh, and I forgot, one of our favorite parts is that he's a big wave surfer. This guy surfs waves that I would never dare to get in the water. So
Charger.
I have a lot of respect for you on that one. You know, I'll go up to 10 feet. After that, I'm clogging out.
You know, it's funny because a couple of years ago you had this trip where you went to Hawaii and then I think you went to Utah, and we did the same exact thing. We were in Hawaii and then we went skiing in Colorado. I'm like, this guy, we're living parallel universes here.
The next day you're skiing. That's really the best.
Yeah.
So John, before we get started, tell us how you got into the industry. What got you into consciousness, healing, and all these innovative, novel solutions that you brought to the health optimization space?
Well, I started out very allopathic. In fact, my father was a Marine, and I was not the healthiest of children because I think I was exposed to a lot of environmental toxins in Camp Lejeune, which you'll see attorneys pursuing people that lived on that base. It was the largest water contamination in U.S. history, and so both myself and my family all have, challenges with our health, to say the least, and we feel like it's partly due to some of that toxicity. But growing up having like asthma and just being very sensitive in general, I was mostly taken to the emergency room with asthma attacks and exposed to mostly, full allopathic type of approaches. And it wasn't until I had a neck injury after a car accident, and I was recommended to go to a chiropractor by my mom, and I was really searching for a career, and I just resonated with me. So I chose that direction, and it just has continued to just kind of open like a flower to me as far as just natural medicine. I've fallen more and more in love with the approach, how rich it can be just being a clinician in this field as it continues to grow and expand and more techniques and tools become available to us to help more and more people. And also my own journey, being able to help myself is an added bonus. Yeah, I've been practicing for about 30 years now. I mean, time flies, and I've seen a lot. I've worked with a lot of different medicines and a lot of different techniques and devices and so forth. And here we are, 2025.
Well, listen, whatever you're doing, keep doing it, because you look as young as a mid-20-year-old man. You're fantastic looking, good looking guy. And I just thank you so much for the work you brought to this space, because you really have some novel products. And with that being said, let's get into our first question. So you've become a leading expert and pioneer in methylene blue therapy, especially with IVs, orals, and nasal sprays. How is it changing the game for mitochondrial health, and why do different methods of administration matter so much in maximizing its therapeutic impact?
Methylene blue is a very complex molecule, and it's not something that is easy to to just give an elevator version of this molecule. And the complexity kind of presents itself because of the multitude of applications that methylene blue has from, a health standpoint, longevity standpoint, anti-cancer, anti-parasitic, antimicrobial, antidepressive. But the real benefit with methylene blue lies in its ability to support the mitochondria from a couple of different ways, where in one way it kind of lubricates what's called the electron transport chain, which is in the mitochondria. And it's this aspect of moving electrons within the mitochondria, which produces heat. And then we utilize that heat to make a substance called ATP, which is like the energy currency within each cell. But also methylene blue, because it's a brilliant blue color, it absorbs red, right? So it reflects blue, which makes it blue, but it's absorbing its opposite. And so it allows us to pull in these photons of light, particularly in the red spectrum of light, which is where a lot of the therapeutic lasers and gadgets and red light panels and so forth. And so there's a really nice marriage between utilizing some of the light therapies that we have available to us, as well as utilizing things like oxygen therapy and stacking, anything from breath work to hyperbaric oxygen to CO2 therapy to hypoxic types of therapies. And I call this red blue O2, where I'm kind of promoting marrying the combination of the red meaning like photobiomodulation and light therapy, and methylene blue, which is a photodynamic. And this is a word that they use to kind of describe something that has the ability to utilize certain spectrums of light within your body and enhance different types of support that each type of light might provide. For instance, there's literally, like, if anybody has been to the dentist and they have a cavity filled, right? They have a device that goes in the mouth, and within moments, it's like it's curing that substance that they pack the cavity with, right? And so that's photodynamic. That's when you have a substance that's perfectly matched with a certain frequency of light. And they've used a lot of research with various compounds that could be either injected into cancer or tumors or whatnot. And there's a large body of research with using photodynamic substances, including methylene blue, for cancer when you add it. And so this kind of like brought us to think about the prostate, right? I don't want to get ahead of ourselves because I know you have a lot of questions, but I get really excited about how we're applying this whole red blue O2 with various types of conditions.
Which I'm interested in, obviously going through the process and doing that. But before I get to my question, because I do want to talk about this cancer study that you kind of mentioned, just a brief overview for the average listener who doesn't really understand what methylene blue is, because most people know it as a gene dye, right? So can you give us a little bit of a history of that and how you specifically started getting involved and what drew you to like your first contact with methylene blue?
Probably 15 years ago, a colleague of mine who was a medical doctor was using it on his mother who had Alzheimer's. And I remember going over to his IV suite and, we would share a lot of, things that we were up to clinically. And, one thing I do remember is looking at the bag of methylene blue. And at first I was thinking, this is insane, like a dye, like I was actually repulsed. I was like, this guy's really gone a little bit too far here. But I do remember like seeing the bag was barely tinted blue. And from what I know now, because like when we do IV methylene blue, it's fairly dark blue.
Yeah, it's pretty dark blue.
Take much. So I know back then he must have just been using just a few milligrams because we were afraid of it. We didn't really understand it. We didn't want to be the first ones, especially with people that we care about. Like this was his mother. But time has gone through and we've seen research and studies and we've gained a lot of we've gained a lot of comfort, utilizing it clinically with ourselves as well as our patients over the last 10 years. And especially combined with light therapy, which is really exciting.
Yeah. So, with that said, in your presentations, I've heard you talk about that French study where 2,500 cancer patients, I believe, on methylene blue did not get infected with the COVID virus. And so, how much of that do you think methylene blue had to do with that, and why was it so protective?
Yeah, it's really amazing. So they're doing a study in Europe, in France, and they none of the people that were in the study got COVID. So the conclusion would be that there seems to be a protective aspect of methylene blue as far as contracting various diseases, right? So we might expect, if we were to be consuming methylene blue, that we might not get the common cold, we might not get the flu, we might not catch herpes, or whatever it might be. We have that extra protection.
At MHI, we're deeply concerned about endocrine disrupting chemicals, also known as EDCs. And based on an overwhelming amount of clinical studies, these harmful chemicals can deeply impact your health and that of your children in ways you could never imagine.
Our first and most crucial piece of advice in this area of life is to stop drinking tap water, as it is a significant source for chemical exposure. Protecting yourself and your family from these everyday chemicals is essential for maintaining good health and well-being.
That's why we're excited to present you with AquaTrue's cutting-edge reverse osmosis water purifiers.
AquaTrue's advanced 4-stage systems remove over 83 dangerous contaminants, ensuring clean and healthy water for you and your family.
Visit the MHI Recommend section on our website to learn more about AquaTrue and get your exclusive discount code, or give us a call if you have any questions. For now, stay healthy
and God bless.
Another really exciting aspect of methylene blue is it's neuroprotective and cardioprotective. So imagine someone that was at high risk for a stroke or a heart attack. They would be really, I think, blessed to have the opportunity to take methylene blue on a daily basis, just for the protective mechanism.
Yeah.
Interesting. And I learned from you that we have, if I'm saying this right, a part of our brain called Locus Coeruleus that's actually blue in our brain, and that the medicine actually hits that part of the brain.
Yeah, it's really crazy. It's the blue spot, the Locus Coeruleus.
Locus Coeruleus.
It's in the pons, right? So it's the lower part of the brainstem, and this is the area of the brain where we have a lot of horizontal eye movements. Yeah. And there's a lot of serotonin associated with this part of our brain. It tends to be a more calming area of our brain. And it's because it's mostly regulating norepinephrine. So if we dampen norepinephrine, then we're going to be more relaxed and more zen and feel, better. That norepinephrine stimulation is what causes us to have a lot of stress responses. And this becomes over exaggerated on many of us in modern society because we get all worked up over missing a meeting or somebody pulling up in front of us while we're driving. Little things can start to become bigger issues depending on how our body responds to those stresses. And that's literally regulated through the locus coeruleus. The other really exciting and kind of interesting aspect of the locus coeruleus is that it has a memory storing aspect where it's storing short-term memory. And the act of integration. So after, you had mentioned, Miguel, that you went to Rhythmia and did some beautiful ceremonies, right? And this could be for many people where they go and see a therapist and talk some problems out, or they have a great conversation with a friend, or they have some experience where they're learning how to stand-up paddleboard, or me with I got a new prosthetic leg, right? You guys know I lost my leg recently. So I'm learning how to do all these things with this prosthetic leg, and this new learning is short-term memory that needs to then get integrated into my long-term memory banks. And this is called memory consolidation. And this memory consolidation happens between the locus coeruleus and the higher brain centers. And in order for this to be utilized and for it to be happening in its most graceful way, then we need really powerful mitochondria. And so the support that the methylene blue is providing through the mitochondria is supporting this area of your brain, and it's allowing this enhanced memory consolidation, such that they've done studies on phobia patients where they were doing like exposure therapy. Like, for instance, if somebody was afraid of a spider, they might have a spider in a vase and they would be like exposed to that. And then if they did that regularly, the person would then start to relieve their phobias, because once you get exposure to it, so it becomes habituated, right?
Yeah.
And so they found that if they dose people with methylene blue along with this exposure therapy, it worked much, much better. And so they felt like this was a result through this memory consolidation aspect.
That's really
I'm getting a call from Garrett McNamara from 100 Foot Wave as we speak.
Look at that.
Hold on. Let's see if he answers. Garrett.
Bring him on.
Garrett.
Once in a while,
Hey, hold on.
if we can find them.
I'm doing a podcast with my boys from Miami, and you just called in, and I thought I would go ahead and get you on.
What's up, buddy?
Okay, can we see Garrett?
Yes, we can.
The legend.
Look at this.
What's up, buddy?
We were just talking about you. We're doing a podcast on methylene blue and just biohacking in general. And then they were bringing up me surfing big waves in Nazaré. And then of course you called.
Of course. Whole building's coming at you.
I hadn't taken methylene blue for about a week, and I just took one last night. I woke up this morning, I felt like, I don't know, felt new again. And then I go straight into the red light.
Nice, man.
Amazing.
That's the way to do it, because you're like pulling those photons in with that methylene blue.
Right. And just for the viewer, just so we understand, and the phobia thing left me thinking, it's so interesting what you said, because norepinephrine is basically a neurotransmitter that we produce, and it's a precursor to producing adrenaline, which is a hormone that helps us cope with stress. So by producing, if I'm understanding, methylene blue is helping you produce more of this norepinephrine, which heightens your alert system, but also makes you more resistant, or you're able to manage better the cascade effect of when your body releases adrenaline, right?
Right. Yeah. It's like the master control area. And when it's overexcited, we have this overamplification of stress responses.
Yes.
You know, like when Garrett's out there in Nazaré in Portugal, and he's about to be pulled into 80-foot wave, right? Like, what's the best thing that he can do is calm himself down, right? Am I right, Garrett? You'd be better to describe this. What's your technique? You use your breath quite a bit, right?
I usually hyperoxygenate to have to do that, but these days I hyperoxygenate before my rides, and on the way out, while I'm out there, and right before I catch a wave.
So you're doing like Wim Hof, like you're...
I do, belly, chest, head, and then I do, there's a bunch of different techniques, but my favorite is right before the wave, I hyperventilate.
Yeah. And so what he's doing is...
So why do you want to hyperventilate before?
So when I'm underwater, if I have to breathe, I'll still be comfortable, and I won't stay long. But you don't do it with free diving. You never hyperventilate with free diving. But with big wave surfing, it helps you stay calm when you need to stay calm. With free diving, you stay calm, and you're way down there 100 feet deep, and you don't even think you need to come up. With big wave surfing, you come up when you can. If you can be comfortable the whole time, it'll help your experience be much more enjoyable.
Interesting. So are you saying that while you're seeing the wave come to you, you go to hyperventilate?
Well, I think what he's doing, because they're out there in the lineup, right? And then they get pulled up to then get pulled over to the wave and then released on the wave.
Right.
So while they're in the water preparing, right, waiting for these swells to come in, he'll include some of this breath work to kind of keep himself calm. Is that about right, Garrett?
Well, first I hyperventilate, then I do a calm down, 3 in, 10 out, and I'll do some Wim Hof. It depends on how many waves I'm catching. It depends on how long I'm sitting there in the channel, how much driving I'm doing. But right before the wave, I do a hyperventilate, and then I do 3 calm down breaths so I don't pass out.
Wow.
And you take some methylene blue before you go out there?
I was about to ask. I'm sure the methylene blue is helping.
And I also use melatonin every night.
Yeah. So we got Garrett on high dose melatonin. He takes 200 milligrams at night, and also believe he's on 90 milligrams of methylene blue per day. So he's
Suntory when I have it. I think I'm out though. I was looking through everything. I couldn't find it. Satori.
So the Satori is a product we make that has the part of caffeine that gives you all the benefit.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're aware. We've tried it already.
I'm taking
with the methylene blue.
Yeah.
And then we got to keep this quiet. I love a good Zen spray before meditation, which I'll do 1 to 3 times a day.
Well, Miguel just did one. Miguel just did one before you called on the screen here. So
I'll tell you a bad experience with it. When I first did it, I didn't know that you were just supposed to spray and keep it. I inhaled it, and oh my god!
And it was the VIP, the strongest one.
Oh my goodness! Did I have a bad time? I had one of my nephews do it, and he threw up.
I'm not going to hold you up. I know you have a lot going on, Garrett, but thanks for being a sport and chiming in on this podcast we're doing.
In person someday.
Yes. Yeah. Would love to. So it also seems, and one more thing that I just wanted before I ask one more question is, methylene blue is supporting in more electron transport in the electron transport chain by delivering or supporting more electrons. So it's like an assembly line that is getting more electrons. So eventually it can it can output into ATP. So the more ATP, the better the mitochondria function, and you got a more efficiency at producing energy units versus producing oxidative free radicals. Because I always like to remind people that for every unit of ATP you're also producing oxidative free radicals. And as we age, we want to make sure that the cardiolipin of that mitochondria, the tight junction, is strong, so it's more efficient. So you don't have any exhaust, right? Or reduce the exhaust that's being produced. Okay.
What happens is that methylene blue is made up of an amine and a thiazine molecule, and they act like a pitcher and a catcher. So it's both a pro-oxidant and an antioxidant, and it goes between being methylene blue and something called leucomethylene blue. And leucomethylene blue is the non-blue form, right? So it's the reduced form. The oxidized and the oxidating form is the methylene blue. And so it about up to 86% of the methylene blue is converted into leucomethylene blue. And anybody that has taken methylene blue and gotten their mouth blue knows that within a couple hours, there's no blue left, right? Yeah. So what happened? Are our brains all like permanently stained blue? You know, I've seen some people showing pictures and built this whole narrative that methylene blue should be avoided for very silly reasons. And one of them is this picture of people that had a biopsy right after, post-mortem dissections of people that were given high doses of methylene blue just before they passed. But in the body, there's this dynamic aspect where we go between leucomethylene blue and methylene blue and this oxidized and reduced. So it's like this dance that's happening where it's both an oxidant and an antioxidant, which what makes it so powerful, and it actually upgrades our mitochondria about 30% overall.
Wow. Interesting.